It started like many bad things do with a knock at the gate. I was out back pruning the rosemary bush that had grown a little wild after the last rain when I heard it 3 hard raps on the wooden garden gate. Not a gentle neighborly tap. Not the kind you give when you forgot your hedge clippers and want to borrow some. No, this knock had weight behind it. Authority. Or at least the illusion of it. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked over. The sun was still climbing warm but soft, casting long shadows from the row of maple trees along our fence. Birds chirped. Somewhere a dog barked. It should have been just another quiet suburban Tuesday in Maple Haven. But standing on the other side of our gate were 3 men I didn't recognize. Each wore a black polo shirt with the words HOA Compliance Enforcement stitched in white block letters over the chest. One of them even had a shiny badge pinned above it. Not a police badge. Not even close, but something that looked like it had been purchased online and buffed to gleam. The tallest, a man in his 40s with a crew cut and mirrored sunglasses, raised a clipboard. "Morning, sir," he said. "We're here for a routine inspection." I blinked. Inspection for what violation report was filed regarding unapproved vegetation and unauthorized garden modifications. I laughed before I could stop myself. "You mean the rosemary bush?" Another man, shorter, broader, with a tactical belt, slung far too tight, spoke next. "Sir, the Hawthorne Ridge Homeowners Association has specific guidelines for fence adjacency, root depth, and proximity to drainage systems." My humor drained. I looked from one to the other, trying to find something that made sense. "I've lived here 7 years. I've never heard of root depth inspections." Crew cut shifted. "It's part of an updated code passed by the newly appointed Security Review Committee." That was new. And troubling. "I haven't heard of any such committee," I said. "Nor have I seen you at any HOA meetings." The third man, silent until now, pulled out a phone and began filming my yard like he was collecting evidence. He didn't ask, didn't say a word, just pointed his lens at our fence. Our potted herbs, the small trellis my wife had built last summer for the grapevines. "Hey," I snapped. "You can't film my private property without consent." Section 4.8 of the homeowner regulations allows visual documentation for suspected violations, Crew Cut said. "Is that so?" I asked. "Let me see the bylaw." He lowered his clipboard but didn't flip to a page. "It's proprietary. That did it. I'm going to need you all to step off my property." Broad guy stepped forward, hand resting too casually on a walkie-talkie attached to his belt. "Sir, if you interfere with our inspection, we'll have to escalate." I took a breath. My years as a technician in high-stress environments had trained me to recognize theater when I saw it. And these men, they were all show. No real authority. But the confidence they wore, manufactured or not, was exactly how people got manipulated. I straightened. "Escalate what exactly?" He didn't answer. That's when the back door opened and my wife stepped out. She wore her usual morning outfit, leggings, a light sweatshirt, hair tied back. No makeup, no pretense. Just presence, calm, quiet presence. She took one look at the men and didn't flinch. "What's going on?" she asked. "HOA compliance inspection," I said, not taking my eyes off them. She descended the porch steps with quiet grace, stood beside me. Her hands were empty. Her voice was even. "I don't recognize any of you," she said. "Who appointed you?" The third man, the one with the phone, finally spoke. "We're authorized by the interim board leadership." "Interim?" she asked. "Craig Thompson's still HOA president." Crew Cut smirked. "Craig's authority has been challenged. There's a vote scheduled to restructure the board. That doesn't make your presence legal," she said, "especially not with that badge." He blinked just once. "Ma'am, we're acting under community code." "No, you're not," she said, voice lowering a degree. "You're trespassing." I glanced at her. She hadn't revealed anything. Not yet. But I could see it. The way she stood, the way her eyes swept over their gear, their stance, their lack of discipline. She was measuring them, cataloging. They didn't know who she was, but I did. And so did she. That night after they left, after muttering vague threats and promising a follow-up compliance visit, we sat at the kitchen table. I sipped coffee. She was quiet. "You ever seen anything like that?" I asked. Her answer was slow, yes, but not in a neighborhood. I let the silence fill the room. Finally, I asked the question I'd been avoiding. Why didn't you show them? She looked up, met my eyes. Because if I do, it escalates. They're not just playing pretend. They're testing, seeing how far they can go before someone pushes back. And if they push again? She stood, reached into a drawer, and pulled out a slim black case, opened it. Inside was her badge, real, federal, issued by the Department of Domestic Compliance and Oversight. If they push again, she said, I end it. The next morning, I walked the neighborhood. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to know if we were the only ones, if those three men had singled us out, or if something darker was taking root across all of Hawthorne Ridge. First stop was Jenna Miller's house 2 doors down, a nurse who worked nights and kept to herself. She opened the door with deep circles under her eyes and tension in her shoulders like she hadn't unclenched in days. Did they come to you too? I asked. She hesitated, then stepped aside and let me in. They were here Monday morning, she said. Said I had too many solar lights in my yard. That it was a safety hazard. Her voice cracked. They called it illuminated non-compliance. She showed me a paper. No letterhead, no signature, just red ink and vaguely threatening language. They'd even given her a warning fine and told her it would double if she didn't remove the lights within 48 hours. I took a photo of the notice and promised to get back to her. Second stop was the Wu's retired couple Meticulous Lawn Perfect Roses. Mrs. Lily Wu answered. Her face softened when she saw me. They said our mailbox was 2 inches too high, she whispered. Took pictures. Threatened to report us. I told them we'd lived here 18 years and no one ever said anything. She glanced toward the living room where her husband, Mr. Henry Wu, sat stiffly in an armchair, staring at the television, but clearly not watching it. They came back the next day, she added. Just to stare. That word struck me, stare. Not speak, not knock, just watch. Surveillance. When I got home, Anna Rowe was waiting with her laptop open and a blank notepad beside her. She didn't look up, just said, I found them. She clicked on a link and turned the screen toward me. It was a website. Bare bones. No color. Just blocky text and a strange emblem at the top, an eagle with scales in one claw and a clipboard in the other. The words underneath had read Neighborhood Integrity Force, Division 14. What is this? I asked. She scrolled down. There were vague mission statements about restoring pride in community, empowered oversight, and independent authority to protect neighborhood standards. No board members, no address, just a contact form and a donation link. But the kicker, a list of active patrol units. And there it was. Hawthorne Ridge Unit 2 operational. They're trying to build a paramilitary-style network under the radar, Anna said. Not just here, dozens of neighborhoods listed, most of them with high HOA fees and weak oversight. My throat went dry. So this is organized. She nodded. Funded too. I ran the donation processor they're using, shell companies tied to a group that's been flagged before. Fake veterans charities, extremist forums, even a crowdfunding campaign for community enforcement startup kits. Startup kits. She turned the screen again. It showed a duffel bag. Inside a polo shirt, plastic badge, clipboard templates for citations, and a guidebook titled Establishing Authority Through Presence, a manual for HOA response teams. I stared at the screen. They're selling these. Not just selling, she said. Recruiting. We spent the next hour building a local map. Red pins for where incidents had occurred. Blue for confirmed visits. Yellow for suspected intimidation. Within an hour, we had over a dozen markers across just 6 blocks. Anna flipped open her notepad. They're targeting homes with weak links, elders, single parents, night shift workers, anyone unlikely to resist or report. Why us? I asked. We're not vulnerable. She looked at me, and for a moment her eyes softened. No, she said, but I am invisible to them. It hit me then, the truth of it. They hadn't just underestimated Anna. They didn't see her, not for what she was. They assumed she was just a quiet woman with a nice yard and nothing behind her eyes but flower beds and Pinterest boards. They had no idea she could clear a room with 6 words and a badge. And that made her dangerous. By evening, I had a plan. We sent a private message to Craig Thompson, the official HOA president, asking for an emergency meeting. He responded with a cryptic message. Can't meet. Being watched. They told me I'm suspended pending review. Review by who, I asked. Anna answered for him. Rhodes. Victor Rhodes, a recent transplant from Arizona. Moved in less than a year ago, yet somehow had become vice president of the Hawthorne Ridge Homeowners Association. We'd met him once, at a block party, broad shoulders, buzz cut, firm handshake, the kind of man who says, I get results before you know what he even does. He proposed creating a security task group. During the last board meeting, Anna recalled. Craig told him it was unnecessary, and now Craig's been sidelined. They're replacing the structure from within. That night, we got another knock at the door, two of the same men from before. No clipboards this time, just folded arms and silence. My stomach nodded. I stepped onto the porch, Anna behind me. Evening, I said. Flat, cold. They didn't answer. One of them handed over a new notice. This one had gold foil at the top, the emblem again. Second compliance warning. Final stage. It accused us of repeated refusal to cooperate hostile behavior toward HOA representatives and refusal to permit safety inspection. Your compliance review is scheduled for Thursday, 8 a.m., the man said. I opened my mouth to respond, but Anna stepped forward. Tell your handler, she said quietly, that if anyone tries to cross onto this property again without a city-verified inspection order, they'll answer to someone with a real badge. The man hesitated, then nodded, once turned and walked away. They didn't look back. Inside, I turned to her. They're coming. She nodded. And for the first time, I saw at the fire she usually kept hidden behind, calm. They think they're enforcing order, she said. But I've seen what happens when power like this goes unchecked. They're not here to help a neighborhood. They're here to control it. I looked around our home, our fence, our flowers, the quiet life we'd built, and I knew what I had to do. We make it stop. She met my eyes. No, she said. We end it. The days leading up to Thursday felt like standing on the edge of a quiet battlefield. There were no more knocks at the door. No more citations taped to our mailbox, no more inspectors pacing our yard. But the silence was worse, heavier, intentional. They weren't retreating. They were watching. On Monday night, our front-facing motion lights flicked on 3 times between midnight and 3 a.m. Each time I checked the feed, and each time it was the faint outline of a man standing just outside the beam of the sensor. Not moving, just there. The camera caught no plate. The image was too grainy to make out a face. But we knew who it was or what he represented. Anna didn't flinch. She quietly rerouted the security system, pushing all footage to an encrypted backup server off-site. She ordered a new set of motion detectors, thermal ones this time, and upgraded the perimeter mic sensitivity. By Tuesday evening, she had mapped out every possible access point on our property, including blind spots and choke points. This isn't paranoia, she told me. This is preparation. I trust you, I said. I know, she replied, and I need you to follow my lead. Meanwhile, the neighborhood started whispering. Jenna Miller texted that she saw 2 black-shirted men parked across from her house for 30 minutes, not moving, not speaking, just sitting, watching. Mike Carter, the single dad down the block, reported that someone had left a packet of printed violations in his unlocked garage. No envelope, no warning. Just pages detailing how his backyard was a fire risk, and his gutters were non-compliant. Mrs. Ellen Harris, our 70-year-old neighbor, said someone knocked on her back door at 4 a.m. and vanished before she could even reach the hallway. But no one was filing police reports. Why? Because these weren't overt crimes. These were veiled threats. And in neighborhoods like ours, where the Hawthorne Ridge Homeowners Association held influence over everything, from fence heights to holiday decorations, people were scared of being singled out. Anna called it soft terror. It's not meant to break you in one blow, she explained. It's meant to wear you down, so you comply just to be left alone. On Wednesday morning, I noticed something strange. The community website, once a static mess of outdated gardening tips and HOA announcements, had been updated. It now had a sleek new landing page titled Compliance and Security Hub Serving Hawthorne Ridge. Below it were links to a downloadable neighborhood compliance manual. a place to report non-approved modifications and most disturbing alive activity feed of recent HOA enforcement actions, including video thumbnails. One of them was our house. Footage of our driveway time-stamped with the caption, "Pending final evaluation, non-responsive resident." I stared at the screen. They're posting surveillance footage. Anna stood over my shoulder, arms crossed, which means they've escalated to psychological ops. This isn't HOA anymore. This is intimidation through visibility. She clicked through to the site's source code. "Sloppy encryption," she muttered. "I can see the admin account name." She turned the screen. "Admin HR security at Rhodes Systems. Net Victor Rhodes." We debated what to do next. "Do we confront him?" I asked. Anna shook her head. "Not directly. That's what he wants. He's baiting us, hoping we'll act emotional so he can claim we're unstable or non-compliant. Then what?" We flipped the script. She reached for her phone and made a call. "I need an evidence specialist for digital capture. Someone who can validate chain of custody." I didn't ask who she was calling. I just listened to her list off IP addresses, file timestamps, metadata terms, a language I only half understood, but that rolled off her tongue with chilling fluency. When she hung up, she said, "We're going to prove that he's illegally surveilling residents. Once we do, I'll elevate this past the city, straight to state jurisdiction." That afternoon, I caught Victor Rhodes standing at the edge of our lawn. He wore a light gray blazer over his usual black polo, hands in his pockets, not trespassing, not technically, just close enough. I stepped out onto the porch. He raised a hand in mock greeting. "Evening," he said. "I hear you've got some concerns." I stared. "You've been watching my house. We watch everyone," he said. "That's what keeps the community safe. You've intimidated people, broken laws." He smirked. "Only laws that matter to people with something to hide." I stepped down a stair. "My wife is a federal officer." He tilted his head. "So I've heard." There was something strange in his tone, like amusement, laced with calculation. As if he wasn't afraid. As if he'd already prepared for that possibility. "She hasn't identified herself publicly," he added. "That would be a breach of jurisdiction, wouldn't it?" I narrowed my eyes. He smiled. "I've read up on her. She's good, very clean record. I admire that. How did you—" He cut me off. "Tell her we're looking forward to the review tomorrow." Then he walked away, just like that. That night, Anna locked down everything. She pulled all files from her bureau laptop into a secured drive. She disabled external access to our home Wi-Fi and set the cameras to high-frequency monitoring. Even our mailbox had a small sensor embedded in its lid by morning. "You think he's going to come?" I asked. "He won't." She looked me in the eye. "He's going to send someone else." And then came Thursday. 8:00 a.m. sharp. A black SUV rolled up. Two men stepped out. The same ones from the week before. Black shirts, plastic badges. But this time, they weren't holding clipboards. They were holding zip ties. Anna stood at the front door, calm as ice. "You ready?" I asked. She nodded. Time to show them what a real badge looks like. They didn't knock this time. They stood on our front walk like they owned it, arms folded, tactical boots planted, the sun glinting off their plastic badges. I watched from the living room window as they exchanged a few words, then turned their gaze to the door as if waiting for it to open by force of will. Anna stood near the hallway, calm, focused. She wore dark jeans and a black zip-up jacket. Not the blazer she used in meetings, not the sweats she wore in the garden. This was a different look altogether, clean, neutral, unassuming. But deliberate. The larger of the two men, the one with the dark buzz cut and squared jaw, took a step forward. He pulled a folded paper from his back pocket and held it at arm's length toward the door. From the inside, we could read it clearly through the peephole. "Final compliance notice, non-cooperative resident. Detain for review." My blood ran cold. "Is that even legal?" I whispered. "No," Anna said flatly. "It's a bluff. All of it. Then why the zip ties? Because they think they can scare me into surrender." Another step, then another. I felt my fists clench. My military instinct surged. Find cover check for weapons count exits. But Anna didn't move. She didn't even raise her voice. She walked to the front door, unlocked it, and opened it just enough that they could see her face, no wider than necessary. "Good morning," she said. Buzzcut held out the paper again. "Ma'am, you're in violation of Article 9B of the Neighborhood Security Code. You've repeatedly failed to comply with inspection requirements and are now subject to physical review procedures." Neighborhood Security Code, she repeated. "Is that a legally ratified municipal ordinance?" The man frowned. "This is a community enforcement issue, not a city one, which means you're not law enforcement." He shifted. "We've been empowered by the board." "No," Anna said, voice steady. "You've been empowered by a man named Victor Rhodes, who's under multiple investigations for impersonation and fraud. And now you're here to commit a federal crime on my front porch." Buzzcut blinked. "We have a right to detain uncooperative residents," he said. Anna smiled just slightly. "Really?" "Show me the statute. Show me the legal precedent. Show me one document with a valid seal signature or court backing that authorizes you to touch me." Neither man moved. Anna stepped fully outside, now pulling the door closed behind her. Her jacket shifted, and in one smooth, practiced motion, she pulled her badge from her waistband and held it up to their faces. Federal issue. Chrome crest, embedded chip, holographic seal. The real deal. I'm Special Agent Anna Rowe, identification number 425AL. I am a federally authorized officer assigned to Domestic Compliance Review. You are currently impersonating law enforcement while making an unlawful attempt at detainment. That's a felony under U.S. Code Title 18, Section 912. She took a step forward. The men stepped back instinctively. You are also in violation of multiple state-level impersonation and intimidation laws. Every word of this interaction has been recorded. You are being observed in real time by a federal response team. If you move to detain me again, you will be met with force proportionate to your threat. Her voice never rose. It didn't need to. The men were frozen. Anna lowered the badge but didn't put it away. Instead, she reached into her jacket and pulled out a small earpiece, tapped it once. Agent Rowe confirming contact with subjects. Affirming direct impersonation attempt recorded with intent to detain. Dispatch response requested. Buzzcut's mouth twitched. You're lying. The earpiece crackled. Dispatch confirms. Standby, response ETA 8 minutes. Hold position. Anna locked eyes with him. Would you like to be here when they arrive? The man's face lost color. His partner was already backing toward the SUV. Anna turned slightly, showing her side profile, exposing her holster still snapped shut, unused, but unmistakable. Your move. Buzzcut hesitated another beat. Then he turned and walked too fast to the vehicle. They didn't speak, didn't shout, just left. No screeching tires, no drama, just silence. Anna stepped back inside and closed the door gently. I stared at her. I've never seen you do that, I said. She exhaled. I hoped I'd never have to. The earpiece still buzzed. She tapped it again. Response not needed. Subjects retreated, continuing evidence collection. She sat down at the kitchen table and began typing. I watched her for a moment, the surreal weight of it all crashing down. You could have been hurt. They weren't professionals, she replied. If they had been, I'd have drawn first. She said it so casually, like she was talking about pruning roses. That night we reviewed the footage. It had caught everything, her words, their postures, the glint of plastic on metal, the fear in their faces when the badge appeared. We uploaded it to a secured cloud server, then sent a copy to her contact at the regional field office. A simple subject line. Active threat. Hawthorne Ridge, HOA unit. Later, as we sat in bed, I turned to her. Why didn't you just show the badge from the beginning? She paused. Because I wanted to see how far they'd go. I wanted proof. And now, she looked at the ceiling. Now I build the case. I reached for her hand and held it. They'll come again. Yes, she said. But next time, they won't walk away. Outside, the street was still. But I knew the calm wouldn't last, because power doesn't fade on its own. It has to be broken, and Anna had just shattered their illusion. The next move was theirs. But this time, we wouldn't be the ones blinking. The next morning, I expected quiet. Not peace, just quiet. A tactical pause, the kind of withdrawal that happens when your opponent has to regroup, rethink, re-strategize. But they didn't regroup. They escalated. It began with the neighborhood newsletter. Hawthorne Ridge used to publish a simple bi-weekly email, birthdays, landscaping reminders, maybe a lost pet or two. But this one was different. It came from an unfamiliar sender security at hawthornehub.net. The subject line read, "Community alert, internal threat identified." I clicked before Anna could. The body of the email was short. A certain resident has chosen to act outside the bounds of community norms. Attempts to intimidate our volunteer safety officers have been noted. We urge all compliant members to report unusual behavior to the HOA security desk. Protect your neighborhood. Stay vigilant. No names, no addresses. But the message was clear. They were turning the community against us. Within hours, I noticed the shift. A neighbor across the street, someone I'd shared a snowblower with 2 winters ago, turned his back when I waved. 2 houses down, someone moved their patio chairs from the side yard that faced ours. The curtains stayed drawn on homes that used to smile through the windows. The silent isolation was surgical. Anna didn't flinch. She cataloged it all, screenshots of the email metadata from the newsletter server, archived links, and the sudden change in DNS registration for the HOA website. Everything was shifting behind digital smoke ownership, transferred to a shell LLC tied to Rhodes Systems. "He's moving fast," she muttered. "He's trying to consolidate control before state jurisdiction freezes his assets." "You think we have that kind of window?" "No," she said. "We already missed it. Now we force his hand." That afternoon, Craig Thompson finally called. His voice was low, nervous. "They've boxed me out," he said. "I went to the post office to send an appeal to the city council, and my HOA email account was revoked." "They've installed a new compliance director," Rhodes Anna asked. "No." "Someone named Victor Rhodes, ex-military, or says he is." Anna froze. First name Victor. She closed her eyes for a moment. "I know that name. Victor Rhodes. Former private contractor previously known as Thomas J. Layton. Dishonorably discharged from an Army intelligence unit after a failed operation overseas. Popped up later in a paramilitary training school in Nevada that got shut down after a student shot himself during a simulated raid. The man was dangerous. Not because he was unhinged, but because he was smart, charismatic. The kind of man who could build a following on fear and call it safety. And now he was standing at the helm of our HOA. That night, just after 10:00 p.m., we heard the hum of an engine outside. I peeked through the blinds. 2 SUVs, no license plates. Their lights were off. Men stepped out, at least 4. All dressed in black. All wearing body armor. One of them carried what looked like a stun baton. They didn't approach the door. They surrounded the house. Anna didn't panic. She activated the silent alarm on her phone, routing a signal through her bureau network. Then she moved to the breaker panel and flipped the exterior lights 3 flashes in quick succession. A signal. The men paused. Anna opened the front door but didn't step outside. Her voice rang out, even measured. "You are trespassing on federal witness property. This perimeter is monitored and protected. Any further advance will result in immediate escalation of force." One man stepped forward slowly. Not Rhodes, not anyone we recognized. He held up a folded document. Anna didn't reach for it. She simply said, "Leave it at the edge of the lawn. Do not cross the gate." He obeyed. They left, quietly. No threats, no posturing, just gone. The document was typed, no signatures, no headers. It read, "You have 36 hours to vacate the premises. Your noncompliance has created a hazardous environment for neighbors. Your presence is no longer considered welcome under the guidelines of Hawthorne Ridge Security Initiative 6A. Please evacuate before forced resolution is required." Anna stared at the page. Then she tore it cleanly in half. "They're giving us a deadline," I said. "No," she replied. "They're giving themselves an excuse." The next morning, Anna drove to City Hall. She didn't dress like a neighbor. She wore the bureau blazer, clean lines, agency pin. Hair pulled back into the kind of no-nonsense ponytail that says, "I'm not here to chat." She walked into the zoning department with a folder 3 inches thick and requested an immediate meeting with the city attorney and public safety liaison. She presented the full case file: surveillance, false citations, impersonation, organized intimidation, use of fake documents to coerce and detain. Within 20 minutes, the liaison called the mayor. By noon, a state compliance officer was en route from the Capitol. But while Anna was gone, they came again. This time, they didn't knock. They drilled a chain into our front gate, a thick rusted length of steel padlocked at both ends, trapping us in. Or trying to. I called Anna. They chained the gate. She didn't say a word, just, "I'll be there in 10." Then she made another call, not to the city, to someone higher. She arrived minutes later flanked by 2 unmarked vehicles, agents, not in suits, not in tactical gear, just plain clothes and clipped badges. The men standing across the street saw them and started to walk away. Anna called after them. "You have exactly 30 seconds to remove that chain, or you will be federally detained for obstruction, unlawful restraint, and criminal harassment." They didn't move, so she nodded. The 2 agents stepped forward. No weapons, no shouting. Just presence, authoritative, real, the kind you don't buy online. One of the men across the street reached into his pocket and pulled out a key. They unlocked the gate, dropped the chain, and left without a word. That night, Anna sat at the kitchen table staring at the empty teacup in front of her. "They're going to try something big," she said. "They're cornered, and cornered people lash out." I leaned across the table. "Then, what do we do?" She looked up. "We take control of the field." How she stood. We expose them, publicly, visibly, legally, in front of everyone. She glanced out the window. "Tomorrow night, town hall. I'm going to stand up and say it all. And if they try to stop you," she smiled, "then they'll finally meet someone they can't scare." The night of the town hall meeting, the air felt like it was holding its breath. The community center hadn't been this full in years. Cars lined both sides of the street. People who usually sent emails about recycling bins now stood shoulder to shoulder in the hallway, whispering, watching, waiting. Some came angry, some scared. Others just confused, wanting to know who to believe, what to trust. Inside, rows of plastic chairs were arranged facing a folding table set at the front of the room. Behind it, the new Hawthorne Ridge Homeowners Association Compliance Council sat like a tribunal, 3 men, none of them elected, all of them wearing matching charcoal blazers and smug smiles. Victor Rhodes sat at the center. He wasn't tall, but he sat like he owned the ceiling. Thick forearms crossed over a folder of printed violations, his fingers tapping in quiet rhythm, like a man who already knew the outcome of the conversation he hadn't yet started. Anna and I sat in the 3rd row, side by side. She was silent, still. Her hair tied back, her jacket zipped. No visible badge, no visible weapon, just presence. But I could feel the shift in the room when she entered. People turned, eyes lingered, whispers followed. They knew. Not the full story, but enough. Craig Thompson opened the meeting, voice shaky but clear. "Tonight's agenda is community security and HOA enforcement procedures. We ask that everyone remain respectful." He looked toward Rhodes. "Mr. Rhodes has requested to speak first." Victor Rhodes stood. He didn't speak immediately. He let the silence settle, let the audience lean in. Then, in a low, controlled tone, he began. "We're here because order is being challenged, because some individuals have chosen to undermine the structure that keeps this community safe." A few nods from the crowd. Some residents, he continued, have refused inspections, harassed compliance volunteers, and spread misinformation about the very people working to protect them. My fists tightened. "Let me be clear," he said, eyes scanning the crowd. "The Compliance Council is authorized to act in the community's best interest. We are not here to police. We are here to preserve." Anna shifted beside me. Then Rhodes's eyes landed directly on her. "And some residents," he said with a faint smirk, "have chosen to conceal certain credentials to sow confusion and resistance." The room stirred. That was his play. Undermine her integrity before she could speak. Anna stood slowly. Every chair creaked as people turned toward her. She walked forward, not rushed, not dramatic, just steady. When she reached the front, Craig looked at her unsure. She nodded once, then turned to face the crowd. "My name is Anna Rowe," she said, her voice clear even. "I've lived in this neighborhood for over 7 years. I planted the grapevine behind the mailbox. I host cookie exchanges in December. And I also happen to be a federal agent with the Department of Domestic Compliance and Oversight." Gasps echoed. Victor Rhodes stood quickly. "Ms. Rowe." She raised one hand and pulled her badge from her pocket, not flashing it, presenting it. The holographic seal caught the overhead lights. The room fell into a hush. "This is my badge," she said, "issued by the U.S. government. My role includes oversight and investigation into illegal impersonation of authority, coercion in civic systems, and abuse of enforcement within residential communities." She turned to face the tribunal. "I've spent the last 3 months documenting this HOA's activities. I have video of unauthorized patrols, false citations, and at least 2 instances of attempted detainment without legal justification. These actions violate state and federal law." Victor Rhodes stepped forward, voice rising. "You don't have jurisdiction over a private HOA, I do." She cut in her voice sharp, firm. "When you impersonate law enforcement, when you collect fees under threat, when you chain a family's gate and deploy men in body armor without certification." A murmur spread through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Wait, that happened." Another voice, "They tried that on us too," said our fence was too dark. Anna turned back to the residents. "This is not about HOA rules. This is about fear. You've been made to feel like you have no choice. Like your own homes can be taken from you over a mailbox or a flower bed, or the way you looked at the wrong neighbor." Her voice softened. "You deserve better." Rhodes slammed his hand on the table. "This is a setup." "She's manufacturing panic." Anna didn't flinch. She turned to Craig. "I've submitted a formal request to the City Council and the State Attorney General's office. I've also provided a full investigative packet to the Department of Consumer Affairs. This HOA is under federal review as of this morning." Someone clapped, then another. Then the room broke into scattered applause. Craig stood up, barely containing his own disbelief. "I motion for an immediate vote to suspend the current Compliance Council pending investigation." Hands shot up, rows of them. Overwhelming, undeniable. Victor Rhodes stared at the rising sea of all arms like a man watching the tide drown his castle. He turned to Anna. "You think this is over?" She met his eyes. "No. I think this is just the start." Outside, the night was cool, clear. Anna stood on the sidewalk, breathing slowly. I joined her, unsure what to say. She looked up at the stars. "I didn't want to be the hero," she said. "You weren't," I replied. "You were the shield," she smiled. Then said the words I'd waited months to hear. "It's done." And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. The next 48 hours moved like a controlled demolition orderly on the surface chaos just beneath. By Friday morning, the City Council had issued an emergency resolution suspending the entire Hawthorne Ridge Homeowners Association Compliance Council. All enforcement activity was halted. Every citation issued in the last 120 days was rendered void. Every fine was under audit. And every digital record email inspection log, even footage from the so-called Neighborhood Security Hub, was seized under a state-authorized data preservation order. But that wasn't the story that spread. What went viral was the video. The footage of Anna at the town hall holding her badge, reading the law, and shutting down a fake authority with a voice steadier than any siren. Someone had filmed the whole thing from row 6, and within hours, it had racked up 2.1 million views online. Real agent shuts down fake HOA police. The comments ranged from awe to disbelief to personal testimonies. "My HOA just did the same thing to us in Florida. They tried this in our community in Arizona. We need more Annas. That woman is a national treasure." Anna read none of them. "I didn't do it for the likes," she said, shutting her laptop. But I could see it in her shoulders, the way they loosened. The weight she'd carried for months was beginning to lift. Meanwhile, Victor Rhodes disappeared. His name was quietly removed from every HOA document. The Security Hub website went offline. Rhodes Systems filed a notice of dissolution, and the shell company Anna had traced, the one linked to the duffel bag starter kits, suddenly scrubbed all online presence. But the Department of Domestic Compliance and Oversight didn't forget, nor did the State Attorney General's office. Subpoenas began rolling out. A local news outlet reported that several other HOAs across the state were now under investigation for similar impersonation schemes, patterns of false enforcement tied to fraudulent citations and aggressive intimidation. Anna didn't say "I told you so." She didn't have to. On Saturday morning, a package arrived at our doorstep. No return address, no postage. Just a plain brown box with my name printed in block letters. I opened it slowly, expecting, I didn't know, a threat, a warning. Inside was a single black polo shirt. HOA enforcement, it read. Folded underneath it, a note typed unsigned. You won this time. But there will always be someone watching. Anna picked it up with gloves bagged to it and made a call. The package was collected by state agents within the hour. That was Rhodes, she said later. Or one of his shadows. I nodded. They want to remind us they're still out there. She met my eyes. And I want them to know I'm still here too. Craig stopped by that afternoon. He looked like a man who'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks, slightly hunched, dark rings under his eyes. But for the first time, he seemed grounded. I owe you both more than an apology, he said. Anna shook his hand. We're not here for apologies, just for truth. He handed us a copy of the formal resolution passed by the city. A new oversight board had been proposed, non-voting independent, made up of outside volunteers, rotating every 6 months. They want me to stay on, Craig said, as a liaison. Will you? I asked. He hesitated. Only if I can earn it. Sunday came like a whisper. The first truly quiet day in months. Jenna Miller waved from her porch. Mike, Carter's kid, set up a lemonade stand. Again, no one stopped him. Mrs. Ellen Harris walked past our driveway with her little dog, paused, and said, Thank you, dear, before continuing on. Anna didn't speak much that day. She sat out on the deck with a book she wasn't reading, sipping tea that had long gone cold, watching the breeze move the leaves like ripples on a still lake. I joined her. You okay? I asked. She exhaled. I'm decompressing, letting it settle. I nodded. You think it's over? No, she said softly. But the worst of it is. Later that evening, a call came through from the Department of Domestic Compliance and Oversight. They wanted Anna to brief a national task force, not in uniform, not under orders, just as a voice from the front lines of a new kind of domestic threat. She agreed. If we don't document this now, she told them, it'll replicate, like a virus. That was her gift, not just seeing patterns, but stopping them before they metastasized. She spent the next 2 weeks drafting a report so precise, so thorough, it became required reading in a pilot program launched 6 states away. They called it the Residential Authority Integrity Act. She just called it doing her job. But the neighborhood it healed, not overnight, but steadily. The gates were unchained. The citations stopped. The quiet returned not as fear, but as peace. A real kind this time. Earned, defended, kept. One evening, Anna and I walked the perimeter of our property, like we used to before everything began. The fence stood strong, the grapevine was in bloom, and there, carved into the bottom slat of the back gate, was the phrase I hadn't seen in months. Peace is not the absence of noise. It's the silence you fought to deserve. She smiled. I forgot I wrote that. She said I didn't. I replied. And I knew then we were finally safe. The morning after the arrests, the silence in our home was unlike anything we had felt before. Not peaceful, not eerie, just clean. Like a wound had been lanced, and for the first time in months, the rot was gone. Anna stood at the kitchen sink, sipping black coffee, her badge and sidearm resting quietly on the dining table behind her. She didn't wear them now, not because she wasn't ready, but because the message had been sent, loud and clear. Still, the investigation had only just begun. We both knew what came next. By noon, she had set up a temporary command post in our garage laptop encrypted drive satellite phone. Agents from her department had been flown in the night before discreetly. They worked in unmarked cars, moved in pairs, dressed like regular folks out walking their dogs, or jogging past the tennis court. They weren't here for surveillance anymore. They were here to build a case. Within 48 hours, subpoenas started dropping like dominoes. One of the first names that came up, Victor Rhodes, the so-called commander of the HOA compliance unit. I remembered him now. He'd knocked on our door once, months ago, smug, polite, wearing a branded black polo and mirrored glasses. At the time, we assumed he was just another overzealous board member. But the files Anna uncovered painted a much darker picture. Victor Rhodes, previously known as Thomas J. Layton, wasn't a stranger to the system. In fact, he'd been indicted in Nevada 6 years ago for wire fraud and impersonating an officer. The case was dropped after a key witness vanished during proceedings. He quietly changed his name, relocated across 3 states, and resurfaced in our sleepy corner of suburbia under the banner of HOA Security Integrity Services LLC. A shell company, no licenses, no government oversight, no real board elections, just a hierarchy of fear, intimidation, and fee collection dressed up as neighborhood safety. Anna's agents traced the group's operations across 4 counties. In each community, Rhodes and his team infiltrated HOA boards, drafted new security mandates, and created fake emergency clauses, giving them full control over community access penalties, even curfews, and no one questioned it. Because it looked official enough. They had uniforms, radios, printed warrants, even blacked out SUVs with fake insignias and flashing blue lights ordered off shady online retailers. The most chilling discovery, though, came from a locked drive retrieved from Rhodes's home office. It was a list, a long encrypted spreadsheet titled Phase 2 Subdivisions Marked for Transition. Anna decoded it over 2 nights, and what we found sent a cold wave through my chest. Each tab represented a different community. Each row was a timeline of infiltration steps, insert new HOA policy, create compliance strike team, isolate vocal residents, initiate citations, then seize cooperative leverage. It wasn't about rules. It was about control, extortion masked as order. But perhaps the most unforgivable line item came under a tab marked Elderly Engagement Protocol. There I read how Rhodes's operatives had specifically targeted senior homeowners. They'd hit them with repetitive violations, grass height mailbox, paint missing fence nails. Each violation came with a hefty fine, and when the resident couldn't pay, they offered to assist by recommending legal services, companies owned by Rhodes's partners. In some cases, Anna said it led to property liens. One widow in the next county had lost her home over a cracked flower pot and 2 overgrown shrubs. I had to step outside after hearing that. The sky looked the same, but nothing felt the same anymore. Inside the garage, Anna's phone buzzed. She answered, then went still. "I see," she said. "And the accounts..." Pause. "Good. Freeze them all. And notify Treasury. It's officially organized fraud now." She hung up and looked at me. We just tied Rhodes to a network of false contractors and escrow diversions. They were laundering the fines. How much, I asked. She picked up a notepad and circled the figure at the bottom, $3.2 million. My knees buckled slightly. It wasn't just a power trip. It was a business model. That night we sat in the backyard. No words. Just the stars above and the low hum of the crickets returning after weeks of silence. Anna broke it first. He wasn't going to stop. "No," I said. "But neither did you." She looked down at her hands, strong and calloused, not from gardening or homemaking, but from a life of carrying burdens most people couldn't imagine. "I used to think if I stayed quiet, they'd leave me alone," she said. I waited. But now I see. Silence just gives them room to build cages. She raised her eyes. "And I'm done building fences for other people to hide behind." Across town, agents were already collecting evidence from other neighborhoods. Arrest warrants had been approved for 3 more enforcement officers. A 4th had fled the state entirely. Anna's team had submitted a preliminary report to the State Oversight Board. The governor's office requested a private briefing. Rhodes was in federal custody without bail. And in Hawthorne Ridge, the real cleanup was just beginning. The Hawthorne Ridge Homeowners Association Board had gone dark. Every single member either resigned or claimed they had no knowledge of the enforcement group's real motives. But the residents, they weren't buying it anymore. They had questions, and this time they weren't asking nicely. The town hall was packed. Folding chairs lined every inch of floor space, the aisles filled with residents standing shoulder to shoulder, some still in gardening gloves and work boots, others in scrubs and business attire. The air buzzed not with panic, but with purpose. The kind that comes when ordinary people realize they've been used and are ready to take back what was theirs. It had been 5 days since Rhodes's arrest. 5 days since the truth had cracked open like a fault line and spilled its toxic roots into the daylight. And now Hawthorne Ridge, our quiet HOA-controlled suburb, was on the edge of something it hadn't seen in years, a reckoning. At the front of the room, the remaining board members sat like statues behind a folding table, faces, tight lips, pursed hands clenched. Their names were already fading from memory, eclipsed by a rising movement of neighbors who had finally found their voice. Jorge Salinas, longtime resident immigrant father of 4 former city clerks, stood and addressed the room with steady resolve. For too long, he said, we gave them power because they told us it was safer that way. But safety without accountability is just quiet tyranny. The crowd murmured in agreement. Ms. Sarah Granger, whose mailbox had been cited 4 times for paint chipping, stood and read aloud every fake violation she'd been handed. When she finished, she dropped them to the floor one by one. By the time she was done, the entire row of papers looked like ash. Anna and I stood near the back. She wore no badge that night, no gun. Just a gray cardigan and jeans, her hair pulled back. She didn't speak, not yet, but the people around her kept nodding, touching her arm in quiet gratitude. One by one, residents came forward to share what they'd endured. A single mother threatened with eviction over a missing porch light. A war veteran fined $400 for flying his flag too high on his own pole. A retired teacher forced to pay a lien or lose her garden she built with her late husband. Every voice added weight, and together they formed something stronger than any HOA letterhead, a collective memory with teeth. Then came the motion. Jorge stepped up again, this time holding a packet of papers. We, the residents of Hawthorne Ridge, moved to dissolve the current Hawthorne Ridge Homeowners Association Board, effective immediately pending investigation of all prior actions taken under its authority. Applause erupted. Not just polite clapping, but thunder, the kind that shakes walls and rattles bones. The board members looked at each other, pale and shrinking, as Jorge handed the packet to the municipal liaison attending on behalf of the city. Filed, noted the official said. Then he added, and backed by the signatures of 78% of households in this district. The old board was done, just like that. What came next was work, real exhausting, uncomfortable work. Committees were formed. Volunteers canvassed every block to gather honest input. A temporary oversight team was established, including homeowners with diverse backgrounds, school teachers, lawyers, paramedics, and yes, even Anna, who reluctantly agreed to serve as a short-term advisor. Not as an enforcer, not as a symbol, just as a neighbor who refused to stay quiet. There were messy parts, of course, disagreements, late-night meetings. Some people wanted revenge, others wanted peace. But slowly, steadily, they started to rebuild, this time with transparency, not secrecy. Every meeting was recorded and streamed. Every policy change was voted on with actual paper ballots. Every financial record was posted on a community bulletin board outside the recreation center. For the first time in years, people waved to each other, not out of politeness, but out of solidarity. 2 weeks later, I sat on our front porch listening to the distant sound of kids playing basketball near the park, the same park Rhodes once tried to fence off for compliance operations. Now it had no barriers, no signs, just laughter. Anna joined me, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. She sat in silence for a while, eyes scanning the street like she always did, only this time not for threats, just for the world she'd helped unmask. "You think it'll last?" I asked. She took a sip, watching as Mr. Henry Wu, from across the street, fixed his mailbox with his teenage son. "It will," she said, "as long as they remember who this place belongs to." "To the HOA," I teased. She gave me a look. To the people, she said, smiling. That Sunday, the new community council held their first open-air assembly on the main lawn. No microphones, no podiums, just neighbors sitting in circles breaking bread and writing a new charter together. Anna and I walked by as a young girl ran up to her with a notebook. "Are you the lady from the video?" she asked wide-eyed. Anna knelt. "I'm just your neighbor," she said. "But my dad says you saved us," the girl replied. Anna looked at me. I shrugged. I wasn't going to argue. She smiled and signed the girl's notebook with a simple line. "Speak loud, stand tall, always check the badge." There was no grand ceremony. No ribbon cutting, no awards, no headlines in the national papers. Just a morning like any other, sunlight filtering through the gorse trees, the scent of fresh-cut grass, the whir of sprinklers turning in slow arcs. The kind of day that would have passed unnoticed a few months ago. But now, every moment of peace felt earned. Anna stood at the back fence, one hand resting on the gate latch. It had been repaired recently, stronger hinges, fresh coat of stain, a new lock. But today, for the first time since the incident, she left it unlatched. I joined her, 2 steaming mugs of coffee in hand. "You sure?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked out over the yard at the swing hanging from the old maple tree, the garden rose just beginning to flower again, and the path we had laid by hand after the rains washed the old one away. Then she turned to me and nodded. Yes, let them in. We had spent weeks restoring the parts of our life that had been invaded, not just the physical spaces, but the intangible ones. The trust, the rhythm, the belief that home was more than property lines and bylaws. Anna declined the official offer to become head of the new Community Security Advisory Board. She said she'd done her part and that others needed to learn how to stand for themselves now. "They have a voice again," she told me. "Let's not be the ones to speak over it." Instead, she returned to her field office on a part-time basis, mentoring younger agents, working cyber surveillance from afar, and occasionally speaking at law enforcement ethics seminars. Quiet strength behind the curtain that's always been her way. One Sunday afternoon, we hosted a neighborhood gathering, potluck style. No permits required, no compliance forms, and no wristbands at the entrance like the old board used to demand. Just folks coming together with folding chairs, stories, and lemon bars. Ms. Sarah Granger brought tea cakes. Jorge Salinas grilled chicken on a rusted-out Weber. The Wu family showed up with a karaoke machine and zero shame. At one point, Anna leaned in and whispered, "Remember when they said this kind of gathering was a fire hazard?" I laughed. "A hazard to authoritarian nonsense? Maybe." As twilight settled, a group of kids played tag across the lawn, darting between shadows, their laughter echoing under the stars. I watched Anna watching them. Her expression softened in a way I hadn't seen in years, an ease in her shoulders aglow behind her eyes. "You ever think about leaving?" I asked. She glanced at me. Sometimes, she admitted. But then I remember, this is where we stood our ground. This is where the lie ended and the truth began, I offered. She took my hand. "No," she said. "The truth was always here. We just needed to show our neighbors they were allowed to believe in it again." Later that night, after the last guest left and the last paper plate was tossed, we stood under the porch light, the gate to the backyard still gently swinging open. "Do you regret not telling me sooner?" I asked. About her badge, her past, her whole other life I hadn't known about until that night. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "No. I wasn't hiding it from you. I was holding it for the day we'd need it." She turned to me serious, and we did. That week, the city filed a formal review of all local HOAs, inspired in part by what had happened here. Transparency requirements were updated. Fake enforcement groups were criminalized at the state level. Civil liberties groups took notice. Other communities reached out asking for advice on organizing, protecting, rebuilding. Anna always pointed them to their neighbors, not her. They don't need another hero, she'd say. They just need to stop waiting for permission to act. One evening, I found a small envelope taped to our door. No return address. Inside a photo. It was a still frame from our porch camera, the exact moment Anna held up her badge. Arm extended, unwavering, her expression calm but fierce. The fake HOA cop frozen mid-reach, caught between disbelief and defeat. on the back in neat handwriting, for showing us what real authority looks like. It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. Today, our life is quieter. Not because it's free of conflict, but because it's anchored in truth. I tend the garden again. Anna built a rain barrel system with the help of some teens from down the block. We installed a new bench near the maple tree engraved with the words, "Peace is not the absence of danger, but the presence of courage." Every time I sit there, I remember the night they tried to arrest her, the arrogance, the fear, the silence. And then I remember her voice, calm and firm, as she changed everything with 6 words. "I'm a federal agent. Stand down." That's the story. Not just about how we stopped them, but about how we refused to become them. We didn't win because of a badge. We won because we told the truth and didn't blink. We opened the gate again. Not because we forgot what came through it, but because we're no longer afraid of what waits outside.